Individual counseling is the foundational, structured backbone of most treatment plans. It is the specific setting where clinical theory becomes actual practice. To keep this work purposeful, a well-run session requires a recognizable 5-step structural arc. The first step is the check-in and collaborative agenda setting. This immediately tethers the 50-minute hour to the client's broader treatment priorities. Step 2 involves bridging from the previous session. Reviewing past progress and between-session practice establishes continuity and accountability. Step 3 is the working phase. This consumes the bulk of the time, focusing on the central task of building a new skill, processing an experience, or resolving ambivalence. Step 4 requires integration. The clinician helps the client figure out exactly how to apply the work from the session to their immediate future. Finally, the 5th step closes the session by summarizing the work, assigning practice, and ending precisely on time. This strict structure prevents the waste of a scarce clinical resource. It ensures that counseling operates as a coherent course of treatment rather than a string of disconnected conversations. Within this structural arc, the clinician has a recurring task, helping clients set goals they genuinely own. Directives imposed by a counselor rarely stick. Instead, the clinician works to break massive, often overwhelming client aims into achievable sequential steps. This diagram illustrates the SMART framework, which requires breaking these large goals into 5 interlocking units. Goals must be specific, measurable, achievable, relevant, and time-bound. Applying this criteria makes progress objectively visible to both the client and the clinician, which directly builds the client's self-efficacy. Collaborative, precise goal setting is the exact mechanism that ties an isolated 50-minute session directly to the formal, overarching treatment plan. To execute this plan, clinicians rely on a set of micro-skills. This is the invisible relational engine of the session, used continuously and largely without announcement. The foundational layer consists of attending, maintaining an open posture, offering minimal encouragers, and practicing active listening to demonstrate the client is being heard. From there, clinicians tactically deploy open questions to deepen exploration, while reserving closed questions for confirming specific facts without interrogating the client. Reflection moves beyond simply mirroring content. A skilled clinician reflects underlying feeling and meaning so the client hears themselves more clearly. Paraphrasing, summarizing, and clarifying act as tools to condense the client's narrative and check for accurate understanding. Clinical confrontation is not aggression or argument. It is the act of compassionately pointing out discrepancies between a client's stated goals and their current choices. Silence is a strategic deployment of space. Premature talking by the clinician often aborts the client's internal processing. More advanced skills include immediacy, addressing what is happening in the relationship in the present moment, and self-disclosure, which must be kept brief and used strictly in the client's interest. These tactical micro-skills are the active, moment-to-moment enactments of empathy, warmth, and clinical respect. Zooming out beyond the single hour, the overarching counseling relationship progresses through distinct macro phases. The initial engagement phase establishes trust. Rushing past this bedrock undermines all subsequent work. Next is the working phase. This is the period where substantive change, skill building, processing, and actual goal pursuit occur. Finally, the termination phase addresses the dual requirements of consolidating clinical gains and processing the complex feelings stirred by endings. Accurately identifying which phase the relationship is in allows the clinician to properly calibrate their interventions and expectations for the client over time. The intimacy of individual counseling inherently magnifies relational dynamics, requiring the counselor to maintain strict professional boundaries. Clinicians must manage transference and countertransference continuously through self-awareness and professional supervision. When alliance ruptures occur, whether through conflict, guardedness, or missed sessions, they must be addressed directly. Using immediacy to name the strain can actually deepen the therapeutic work. Operationally, all of this dynamic relational work must be objectively and confidentially recorded. Clinical documentation mandates specific elements: the session focus, the client's response, progress toward the treatment plan, and the go-forward plan. Rigorous documentation protects both the client and the clinician, while ensuring the continuity of care across the lifespan of the relationship. It is a reality of the field that not every individual needs or will accept long-term traditional treatment. Brief interventions are short, highly focused conversations used primarily in non-treatment settings, like emergency departments, to raise awareness among risky users. This logic tree illustrates the SBIRT framework: screening, brief intervention, and referral to treatment. It acts as a primary triage mechanism, dividing populations into low, moderate, and high-risk pathways. SBIRT matches interventions to risk level. Low-risk cases get brief feedback. High-risk cases get full referrals. The core structure of an effective brief intervention is summarized by the FRAMES acronym. F and R stand for providing personal feedback on impairment and placing responsibility for change clearly on the client. A and M involve offering clear advice alongside a menu of options, preserving the client's autonomy to choose their path. Finally, E and S stand for utilizing empathy as the relational stance and actively building the client's self-efficacy. Frameworks like SBIRT and FRAMES operationalize the principle of extending clinical reach to people who would never enter a formal program. Single-session brief interventions are distinct from brief therapies, such as solution-focused or motivational enhancement therapy, which span a compressed number of sessions. These brief therapies are not inferior treatments. They are deliberate, evidence-based matches of clinical intensity to a client's actual need. The ASAM matching principle dictates that overtreating wastes resources and frustrates clients, while undertreating severe cases sets them up for failure. The ultimate boundary of matching need requires a clinician to recognize the absolute limits of their own professional scope. Conditions like untreated psychiatric needs, acute medical issues, and specialized trauma beyond the clinician's training require immediate referral. Transferring these cases is a mandatory ethical duty to protect the client, not a clinical failure. Whether utilizing micro-skills in a deep relational phase, deploying a brief intervention, or referring a client out to specialized care, clinical efficacy relies on the precise alignment of structured tools to the client's exact level of need.